There's something about thirst that nobody talks about. Not the kind you feel after a long walk or a hot afternoon. The other kind. The thirst that comes from being invisible, from standing outside windows, watching people eat and drink and laugh, while you wonder if anyone remembers you're still human. I've been thinking about this lately. About water. About the simplest things we take for granted. There's a restaurant I used to pass on my way to work years ago. It sat on a corner where two busy streets met, the kind of place that always had a line out the door on weekends. You could smell the bread baking from half a block away. In the morning, steam would rise from the kitchen vents, mixing with the cold air, and for a moment, everything felt warm and possible. I never ate there, not once. It was the kind of place you saved for special occasions, or at least that's what I told myself. The truth was simpler. I was always rushing, always somewhere else. Always convinced that the important things were waiting for me just a little further down the road. Isn't that how it goes? We spend so much time hurrying past the moments that might change us. I don't pass that restaurant anymore. Different job, different route, different life. But I think about it sometimes, not because of the food I never tasted or the dinners I never had. I think about it because of something I saw there one autumn morning. Something small, something I almost missed. Sometimes the moments that stay with us aren't the grand ones. They're the quiet ones. The ones that happen in the space between breaths, when nobody's looking, when there's no audience and no applause, just one person seeing another person. That's all it was. But that was everything. It was October. I remember that. The kind of October morning where the air bites just enough to remind you that summer's really gone. The leaves hadn't quite given up yet, clinging to branches in shades of rust and gold, but you could feel winter waiting its turn. I was running late. Again. The coffee shop had been crowded, my train had been delayed, and I was walking too fast, the way people do in cities when they're trying to make up for lost time. Head down, mind elsewhere, moving through the world like it was something to get through, not something to see. And then I heard it, a voice. "Excuse me, could I trouble you for some water?" I almost didn't stop. That's the shameful truth of it. I almost kept walking, pretending I hadn't heard, pretending I had somewhere too important to be. But something in the voice made me pause. Not the words, the gentleness of them. There was a man sitting on the ground near the restaurant's side entrance. Not blocking the door, not demanding anything, just sitting. His back against the brick wall, his coat too thin for the season, his hands resting on his knees like he was trying to take up as little space as possible. He looked at me when I stopped, and I saw something in his eyes I wasn't expecting. Not desperation, not even hope, really. Just a question. Just the simple human act of asking. "I don't need food," he said, as if he needed to clarify. "Just some water, if it's not too much trouble." His voice was quiet. Educated, I thought. The kind of voice that had read books and told bedtime stories. The kind of voice that had said, "I love you," and "I'm sorry," and all the other things voices say when they belong to people who matter to someone. I fumbled in my bag, looking for change, for something, for any way to feel less helpless in the face of someone else's need. But he shook his head gently. "Just water," he repeated. "That's all." I nodded. I don't remember if I said anything. I think I just nodded and walked away, toward the restaurant entrance, feeling the weight of his dignity and my own discomfort. The restaurant was just opening. Through the windows, I could see someone moving between tables, setting out silverware, lighting small candles. The morning light came through at an angle, catching dust motes in the air, making everything look softer than it was. I pushed open the door. The warmth hit me first, then the smell of coffee and butter and something baking. Behind the counter, a man was arranging pastries under glass. He looked up when I entered. He was older, maybe 60, the kind of face that had weathered into kindness. Lines around his eyes that came from smiling. Hands that moved with the sure, unhurried grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime making things for other people. "We're not quite open yet," he said, but his tone wasn't unkind. "Give us 10 minutes?" "I'm not here to eat," I said. "There's a man outside. He asked for water. I was wondering if—" I didn't finish. I didn't need to. The restaurant owner set down the pastry he'd been holding. He looked at me for a moment, then toward the window, toward where I'd come from. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or just acknowledgement. "I'll take care of it," he said. I should have left then. I should have said thank you and walked away, back to my late arrival and my busy day, and all the things that felt urgent, but probably weren't. But I didn't leave. I stood there, near the door, watching. The owner moved to a cabinet behind the counter and pulled out a glass. Not a plastic cup, not a disposable container. A real glass, clear, clean, catching the morning light. He filled it from a pitcher he kept in the refrigerator, then paused. I watched him set the glass down on the counter. Then he turned to the pastry case. He selected a croissant, golden and perfect, the kind that would flake into 100 delicate layers. Then a small bowl of fruit. Then he poured coffee into a proper ceramic mug, the kind you'd use for a customer, for someone who mattered. He arranged it all on a small tray, not a serving tray. The kind of tray you might use to bring someone breakfast in bed. He moved toward the door, and I stepped aside. I don't know if he noticed I was still there. I don't think he cared. He pushed through the door with his shoulder, balancing the tray carefully, and walked to where the man sat against the wall. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw him kneel down, saw him set the tray beside the man on the ground within easy reach, saw the homeless man's face change, confusion giving way to something else, something that looked like disbelief. The owner said something else, his hand gesturing toward the food, toward the coffee, toward everything he'd brought. The man shook his head. I could see him protesting, pointing at the water, trying to explain that this wasn't what he'd asked for. But the owner was already standing, brushing off his knees, smiling in a way that wasn't pity and wasn't charity. It was something simpler than that, something older. "It's Sunday," I heard him say as he turned back toward the restaurant. "Everyone should eat on Sunday." The homeless man sat very still, looking at the tray beside him like it might disappear if he moved. Like it was a miracle he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch. I should have left then. I should have given them that privacy, that dignity. But I couldn't move. I stood there, feeling something crack open inside my chest. Something that had been sealed up tight for longer than I knew. The owner passed me on his way back inside. He met my eyes briefly, and I saw no pride there, no expectation of praise or recognition. Just the calm of someone who'd done what he thought was right. Nothing more and nothing less. Inside, he went back to his pastries, back to his preparations, back to the work of feeding people, which I realized then wasn't just his job, it was his calling, his way of being in the world. Through the window, I watched the man outside lift the water first. He drank slowly, carefully, like it was something precious. Then he picked up the croissant and held it in both hands for a moment before taking a bite. I saw tears on his face, not many, just enough to catch the morning light. That's when I understood. It wasn't about the food. It wasn't even about the kindness, though that mattered too. It was about being seen, about someone looking at him and recognizing him as a person who deserved more than the bare minimum. Someone who deserved warmth and beauty and a meal served on a proper tray. Someone who deserved dignity. I left then. Finally, I walked to work, but I wasn't late anymore. Time had rearranged itself somehow. The urgency I'd felt an hour before had evaporated, replaced by something quieter, something that felt like shame and wonder mixed together. I never went back to that restaurant. I wish I had. I wish I'd thanked the owner properly, told him what his small act had meant to a stranger watching through a window. But I was afraid, I think. Afraid of making it about me. Afraid of taking something that was his and making it mine. Some gifts aren't meant to be acknowledged. They're meant to be witnessed and carried forward. I've thought about that morning 1,000 times since then, tried to understand what it meant, why it stayed with me when so many other moments faded. It wasn't dramatic. Nobody's life was saved. No problems were solved. A homeless man got breakfast and a glass of water. That was all. By afternoon, he was probably hungry again. By evening, he was probably still homeless. But something changed anyway. Something invisible and immeasurable. I think about the restaurant owner sometimes, about the choice he made in that moment. He could have brought out a plastic cup of water. He would have been kind. He would have answered the request. Nobody would have blamed him. But he didn't do what was enough. He did what was human. That's the thing about kindness, isn't it? We've made it so complicated. We've turned it into programs and systems and policies, and those things matter. They do. But sometimes we forget that kindness can also be as simple as choosing a real glass over a plastic cup. As simple as remembering that every person you meet is carrying an invisible weight you can't see. As simple as treating a stranger the way you'd want someone to treat your father if he ever found himself sitting on a sidewalk asking for water. I think about the homeless man too, about his gentleness when he asked, about his protests when he received more than he'd requested, about the way he held that croissant in both hands, like it was something sacred. I wonder what his name was. I wonder what had happened in his life to bring him to that corner on that October morning. I wonder if he remembered that breakfast on the cold nights that followed. I hope he did. I hope it kept him warm in ways that had nothing to do with food. Because that's what dignity does. It insulates us against the cold. There's a kind of poverty we don't talk about enough. Not the poverty of empty stomachs, though that's real and terrible. I'm talking about the poverty of being unseen, of moving through the world like a ghost, present but unacknowledged, there but not there. That's the poverty that kills the spirit long before the body gives out. And the antidote isn't complicated. It's not about money, though money helps. It's not about solutions, though solutions matter. It's about presence, about stopping, about looking at another person and letting them see in your eyes that you recognize them as your equal, as your kin, as someone who matters simply because they are. I failed that test that morning. I'm not proud of that. I saw the man. I heard his request. But I didn't really see him, not the way the restaurant owner did. I saw a problem to be solved, a moment to get through so I could continue on to more important things. The restaurant owner saw a person. That was the difference. Maybe the smallest kindnesses are the ones that save us. Not because they solve our problems, but because they remind us we're worth saving, that we're still part of the human family, that we haven't been forgotten or erased or written off. I've tried to carry that forward, tried to be more present, tried to look at the people I pass on the street and really see them. Not always successfully, not even most of the time, if I'm honest, but I try. And sometimes, when I remember, I choose the real glass over the plastic cup. I take the extra moment. I offer the small grace that costs me nothing, but means everything. Because dignity isn't something we earn. It's something we're born with. And every act of kindness is just us recognizing in others what was always already true. The seasons have turned many times since that October morning. The leaves have fallen and grown back and fallen again. The world has kept spinning, as worlds do, indifferent to our small human moments. I wonder sometimes if that restaurant is still there, if the same man still owns it, if he still brings out breakfast on proper trays for people who ask for nothing but water. I hope so. I hope there are 1,000 small moments like that, one happening every day in places I'll never see. I hope there are people in every city and town who understand that kindness isn't a transaction. It's a recognition, a remembering of who we are beneath all the things that divide us. We're just people, all of us, hungry and tired and trying our best. Some of us have homes to return to, and some of us don't. Some of us have full stomachs, and some of us are learning to live with empty ones. But underneath all of that, we're the same. We're fragile and resilient, and desperately in need of each other's gentleness. That's what I learned on that corner, watching through a window. That's what the restaurant owner taught me without meaning to. That's what the homeless man's quiet dignity showed me, even in his need. We have so little control over the big things, over the systems that fail, and the luck that runs out, and the 1,000 ways the world can be cruel without meaning to be. But we have control over the small things, over how we treat the person in front of us, over whether we choose the real glass or the plastic cup, over whether we see dignity or just see need. Those choices ripple out in ways we'll never fully understand. They change us as much as they change the people we offer them to, maybe more. I'm gentler now than I was, slower, more likely to stop when someone speaks, more willing to see the person behind the request. It's not because I'm better than I was. It's because I saw something that morning that I couldn't unsee. A small grace offered freely. A moment of humanity in a world that too often forgets what humanity means. The coffee's gone cold in my cup now. The morning has given way to afternoon. But I'm still here, still thinking about that October day. Still feeling grateful for the lesson I didn't know I needed. There's something healing in remembering these moments, in holding them up to the light and seeing what they can teach us about kindness, about dignity, about the way small acts echo through time, changing us in ways we only understand in hindsight. So, I'll carry it forward, this memory, this lesson. I'll try to be the person who offers more than what's asked for, who sees the human before the need, who understands that dignity isn't something we give people. It's something we recognize in them and reflect back, like light catching in a clean glass of water. Maybe that's all any of us can do. Offer one another these small graces, these reminders that we're seen and valued and worthy of kindness, that we're not alone in our hunger, our thirst, our need for warmth in a cold world. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. The world outside is still loud and uncertain, but here, in this quiet space, I can still see that morning. Still see the golden croissant on the tray. Still see the tears catching light on a stranger's face. Still feel the crack in my chest where something hard gave way to something soft. And I'm grateful for it. All of it. Even the parts that made me uncomfortable. Especially those parts. Because discomfort is often just another name for growing. For learning to see what we've been trained not to see. There's a kind of peace that comes from knowing we can still be changed. That it's never too late to choose gentleness over speed, presence over productivity, dignity over efficiency. That we can still, at any moment, decide to be the kind of person who brings more than water when someone asks for water. I think I'll hold on to that for a little while longer, for as long as I need to. There's something healing in it, don't you think?